Hey guys, welcome back to Anthony's Tennis Hub. My name's Anthony Hirsch, and today I want to talk about the big three. I want to talk about Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic. Three of the best and most dominant athletes that we have seen in a long time, if not ever, in the sport of tennis. They have been rocking the sport for a long time. They have really defined the sport for a long time. It's hard to differentiate and divide tennis from what the big three are. It's hard to, pull those two things apart now at this point. They are at the top of all of the stats, these three guys. And we connect them together, but in a lot of ways, they're very different from each other. They're very different from each other in terms of play style, in terms of which surface is their favorite. Rafael Nadal's most successful surface is clay courts. Roger Federer's most successful surface is grass courts. Novak's is hard courts. They all have one of the slams, which has been by far their most successful. Wimbledon for Federer, French Open for Nadal, Roland Garros, and Australian Open for Djokovic. They have had different journeys, very different journeys, to get to this point. Djokovic, he was way behind Rafa and Roger, more closely associated to the level of Murray, which was at a very top level as well. People are saying, who's better, Murray or Djokovic? And then he came to the top. He never left. He's still at the top. He's still number one. These guys together have won 184 big titles, 66 slams, 104 Masters, which is insane, 1 Olympics, and 13 ATP Finals tournaments. Combined 82.7% win percentage altogether between the three of them at big tournaments. 82.7%. Always getting to the ends of tournaments without fails. Putting generations of players just at the side. The 90s generation was basically wiped out due to these three guys. This dominance, which Djokovic is still at the top as of right now, but more than I think I've seen while I've been watching the sport, seems like another guy at the moment is unequivocally the best player in the world. When Alcaraz broke through in 2022, a lot of people are saying Alcaraz is the best player in the world, but people are still arguing for Rafa and Novak. But at this point, Sinner is the best player in the world. 42 of his last 45 matches, he won the Australian Open. He's the best player in the world. We're at a point which we haven't really seen before. Djokovic about to be 37 when the next major comes around. Only guys to win majors at 37, which I've said before, Bill Tilden and Ken Rosewall. That was a while ago. So we'll see if we're seeing the last breaths of the Big Three era. We don't know when Rafa is even coming back. There are now concerns of him even playing the clay season or the start of it. So we'll see when he returns. But man, it's been an unbelievable era to watch. It's been so crazy. And the stats just speak for themselves. Federer winning 65 straight grass court matches. Nadal winning 81 straight clay court matches. Djokovic winning the first 41 or 42 matches of 2011, mostly on hard courts, some on clay as well. I mean, these three guys are so complete, but also so different from each other as well. They have rocked the game for a long time. And I think there's a bit of a myth or disconnect when it comes to the big three. I think a big myth and disconnect is that these guys never lost. These guys never struggled. They're perfect. They have perfect careers. They never struggled. They never lost. They were always winning titles. They were always at the top. Well, here's one of the reasons that we connect these three guys together, right? Even when one of them was going through a struggle period, often at least one of the other guys was still there to dominate at such a high level, all-time level. And if not, usually you would have both. Usually you would have both of the other two guys while the other guy is out. Which is really what makes the big three the big three. Together, they left no wiggle room. They left no room for other guys to get up in the ranks and play. They really just kept those top spots to themselves. 2007, they finished year-end top three, the three of them. 2019, 12 years later, they finished year-end top three, the three of them. 8 years 8 different years they finished year-end top 3. And then you put in Murray, right? Murray also, 11 slam finals, 35 big finals, always in 59 semifinals of big tournaments, an incredible 76% win rate before his comeback. Murray was on, like, something else. He was insane. Murray was on a different level. 30-2 in finals against players that aren't the big 3 between, like, 2007, 2017. Murray is also a crazy player. Murray is nuts. So when people try to take away what Murray is from what, he's on another level from the big 3, in terms of the big 3 are better than Murray. But that being said, Murray is astonishing, and he deserves to be paired in with them in a different term. We can have both the big 3 and the big 4. I don't even think it should be particularly controversial. And here's the thing. 2016, when Djokovic started withering down a little bit and started having a bit worse of a period, and Federer was injured, Nadal was also out, Murray took over and he was the guy. So, and he was tough to beat for everybody else. So there was just no room for these guys with 4 all-time great players and 3, probably the 3 greatest players that ever lived. And that in itself is the craziest statement ever. How do we have the 3 greatest players to ever live in the same era when I'm such a, nerd when it comes to tennis history, honestly, like looking at the players from the past, and I know it was a different time, but I'm interested because I read books that they write at the time and they're so passionate about it. They have the tennis rivalry. Those players back in the day were pretty good. Just read a book that they write. They say it was pretty good. It was a pretty tough time to win. Pretty much at any point, you had players playing every single day practicing to get to the very best. They cared about, winning. They're very sporting at the time as well, but they cared about winning. And if you just read those books, those players cared too. Whether it's Bill Tilden or Rod Laver or, often I feel like Rod Laver is used just as an umbrella for all of the players before maybe the 70s, or before the mid to late 70s, but there's so many other players. Ken Rosewall, Bill Tilden, Anthony Wilding, Pancho Gonzalez, Richard Gonzalez, who I have a book from right here. These players are unfathomingly good. It is insane, those players. So many of those players. Ken Rosewall reached 35 major finals, if you include pro majors, which is where the tougher competition was at the time. These players were nuts. Bill Tilden, by the way, he reached the final of 52 consecutive tournaments that he played. So it's not like the big 3 invented crazy, unbelievable, mind-blowing stats. You have stats like that back in the day. Although you could argue with worse competition, game was different, all of that, that's fine. I don't mind. But I just want to say, we've had great players in history. And when the big 3 came around, Sampras and Agassi were at such a high level and pushing the sport to such an incredible level. Sampras, year-end number 1 6 straight times. I've said this before, but 14 slams. Agassi with 18 masters. These were the highest numbers. Now you have Djokovic with 40 masters. Between the 3 of them, you have 104. Federer with 28. Nadal with 36. And you have 66 slams, Novak with 24 slams, which is 10 more than Sampras. All 3 of these guys could have been the greatest of all time. Federer was the greatest of all time. Federer is nuts. And you still have people proclaiming his tennis genius, which I love. Because, man, he deserves every second of our attention for what he did. And I'm not talking about the tweeners. I'm talking about how good he was of a player. Absolutely crazy. That is, reaching the final of 10 Grand Slams in a row, then missing 1, losing Djokovic 2008 Australian Open semifinal in straight sets. Then he got to 8 more finals in a row. 18 of 19 Grand Slams consecutive, he reached at least the final. I want to make a video just on Federer by himself, but his stats were unreal. He pushed the sport by himself to such a high level. And for me, his journey is like, I said this in another video, but just to say again, and I'll link out video above also talking about Sinner and Alcaraz and their journeys. But Federer to me is like a sprint, then a marathon. He was a bit of both, right? He had and what I mean by that is he had a sprint in terms of he had the most unreal level and, dominance over some of the highest level athletes in the world for about 5, 6, 7 years. We still haven't seen the likes of in tennis. He was barely losing matches every year, and he was just on another planet. He would have been beating just about anybody the level he was playing, and that's obvious if you think about just how dominant he was. It shows that he was on a level that was just insane. But then he, by his own kind of sake, had to push for an incredible longevity because very few before him had really, really done that in a big, big way. You could maybe point to like Tilden or Rosewall Gonzalez, maybe Connors, Axie, Gomez. You had other players with great longevity like Fabrice Santoro. You had other great players who had been around a while, but not world number one at 36 and, getting a point away from winning Wimbledon at 37, then beating Novak in straight sets a few months later and still contending for the biggest titles in the world, winning Miami at 37, 38. I mean, people thought he was done at 30, 31. That's usually when players start withering away. Federer, still competing with two of the best players that ever lived, Nadal and Djokovic, still was able to maintain his own and stay at the top, showing a remarkable longevity. And, I just feel like he was, Nadal and Djokovic followed suit, but Federer pushed those guys to be the very best versions of themselves. And Djokovic needed Federer, and so did Rafa too. But his is like a sprint and then a marathon. He just kind of stayed at the top for such a long time. It was crazy. And, it was hard because he was constantly losing tight matches, and then he would still be contending for big titles against Nadal and Djokovic. Constantly losing tight matches. He had constant struggle, Federer, throughout his career. Losing tight moments, losing tight matches against Nadal and Djokovic. Yet he still got to number one in 2017, 2018, and winning majors. And before he did, he was struggling as a junior. He was like, one day he woke up, he was like, I'm going to actually fulfill my potential. And then he went on an absolute sprint. His is like a sprint and then a marathon. It's a bit of a mix of both. Djokovic is a sprint. He was really struggling at the start, kind of like Federer. And then at 23, he was, okay, not quite that. He was a top guy for like 3 years. Yes. But once he reached 2011, he reached the Federer Nadal status, and he was on another planet. From 2011 onwards, his was he has been an absolute sprint with just like a break in 2017, 2018, first half 2018. Other than that, he's been consecutively dominating with such a physical game style for such a long time. It's been almost mind-blowing scientifically. Like the fact that Djokovic has been able to do this has been crazy. So I just think about Djokovic and these physical marvels and how they've all had incredible longevity. We thought maybe the guy after Federer, the generation after Federer, would, maybe be able to do these things and stay at the top for a long time. Maybe the guy after Federer, maybe the guy after Nadal, maybe the guy after Djokovic, the next young guys, they can do this. But it's crazy because it is Djokovic, who's part of this generation. Yes, the youngest of the three, but he's part of this gen. He does these things. He's still number one at 36. He's going to be the oldest world number one passing Federer next week. Djokovic won 4 of the 5 biggest titles last year. Djokovic just split with Ivanisevic. We'll see how his career goes. He's been doing a little bit worse recently, but I still expect him to win a big title or two. But we'll see. But it is just so crazy. They've had total of 938 weeks at number one, 17 and a half years. And yeah, Djokovic, a large part of that. Now, in his 419th week as number one, we get really numbed down to these numbers. And the weeks at number one, actually, I think is maybe passable just if, a lot of those weeks went to Federer and to Rafa as well, 300 something, 200 something. If you have, a guy who doesn't have these other two crazy players in their era, maybe he can pass it. But the 40 Masters titles, I don't know that that's getting passed. although I can bite my words, I'm not sure either, but these numbers are just crazy. 24 slams. It's going to take a while. And, 15 years, 10 years, rewatching this with Alcaraz taking it, I see you. It's fine. I see you when Alcaraz wins his 55th Masters title and has been number 1 for 500 weeks. I see you. Thanks for coming back to the video. So anyway, these guys push the sport to an absolutely different level, and for Nadal, it's just been a marathon. Shout out to Nadal. He is the definition of struggle. Because Djokovic struggled right at the top, insane struggles, He was struggling like crazy. Physical struggles, retiring out of matches. He had Federer and Nadal to deal with. I've talked about this before, but he was kind of like the prankster of the tour. He was double faulting. He was hitting drop shots. Had improved about every part of his game. He's having different physical issues that he kind of, start changing his diet, doing this, doing that. He changed everything. And then he went on an absolute tear of it. And he still had to fend off Nadal and Federer, which I guess is true for the other two as well, with the other two players. So these guys struggled. Nadal, constant injury. Nadal losing on hard courts and grass courts all the time as a junior, especially on hard courts. Getting beaten down by Gonzalez at the 2008 Australian Open. At the 2007 Australian Open. And then to Tsonga at the 2008 Australian Open semi. And then he beat prime Roger Federer the next year in the final. Losing to Juan Martín del Potro, 2009 US Open. Beaten down, winning just 6 games. That's equal to 1 set. Winning 1 set. That's all they took against Del Potro in the semifinal. Came back, beat Djokovic in the US Open final the next year, right before Djokovic went on an absolute run of it at the start of 2011. And after Djokovic beat Federer. These are the things that made them great. They're not great because Federer hits, a tweener and a behind. I mean, that makes him great. Okay, that makes him great. That makes Federer a little bit great. But it's not what made them the absolute greatest athletes that they are. What made them great is their absolute defiance and resilience to struggle. They struggled and they figured it out. And that's what Jannik has been able to do. Jannik Sinner, that's why he's the best player in the world. That's why he's the best player in the world. Because he grew. Moment by moment he went through all these struggles, all these losses. 5-set losses like crazy at the slams. He was getting close, not quite, but he was learning. He was learning from those losses. He was also having physical issues. He was having issues with the serve, having issues with the variety. Had to figure it out with Alcaraz. Had to figure out the mental side too. You saw the match against Altmaier at Roland Garros. He had everything to figure out, but he also had so much potential, and he had the mindset that really, and the talent that, made you think, okay, you could do this. And that's what the big three are. That's what Alcaraz did. Rio got injured, came back, won Indian Wells. That's what will make them great. It's not always winning or having these insane, wins all the time. What makes them great is having those struggles that you will have as a top athlete at the highest, most intense level in the game, and then being able to defy that and come back right away. That's Nadal losing to Gilles Muller 2017 Wimbledon 15-13 in the 5th set, and then, getting to the final of 2 of the next 3 majors and winning 2 of them, I believe. It's the US Open, also French Open 2018. It's Djokovic losing a final to Stanislas Wawrinka 2015 Roland Garros when everybody thought he was finally going to win his first Roland Garros. Crying in the press conference because he finally didn't have to play Rafa, who he's played 10 times at Roland Garros now. Double digits. He's played by far the greatest clay court player ever at Roland Garros, beating him twice, by the way, which is impressive in itself. But finally got to play Wawrinka, was crying. I think the most heartbreaking loss of his career. I couldn't believe it at the time. Won the next 4 majors. Not a Grand Slam, but damn is it good anyway. Damn is it good anyway. Djokovic came back right away to winning. He was defiant. He wanted to win. Because I think these guys, they know they're going to lose. And they want to see how they can improve. They want to get the best out of their games and the best out of themselves. And they enjoy playing the game. That's why they've been around so long. And had incredible longevity. Too bad for Dimitrov. Too bad for, Del Potro. Even 1988, born 1988. Too bad for, Tsitsipas and Medvedev and Zverev. Too bad for, the last couple of years, Sinner and Alcaraz even, but especially Tsitsipas, Medvedev, Kyrgios, Raonic, Dimitrov, and then you go even back to people like Tsonga, Berdych, Del Potro, Federer. I mean, these guys have let so many generations, just kind of wither away because of these four guys. And Sinner and Alcaraz now, they're not going to let that happen. They're also much younger. So that helps. That is the big three. And it's also, the greatness that they show, the level that they have. But it's also Federer, throwing his racket as a junior, not being able to figure it out in so many aspects, and then putting his head down and saying, I can do this. Goes on absolute tear of it. Federer losing to Nadal, 2008 Wimbledon final, and then, coming back the next year and winning against Roddick, 16-14 in the fifth set. Taking the French Open the next year. Comes back from 2 sets slowed down against Tommy Haas earlier in that tournament. Beats Soderling, who beat Rafa. It's moments like that. And it's moments like Djokovic losing just about every match in 2010 to Federer and Nadal, not making a single Masters final that year. Especially to Federer, losing to Federer all the time in 2010. Then being able to beat him in the semifinal of the US Open, which I think is one of the most underrated kind of matches in the story of the big three, and what that did for Djokovic, in my opinion. And the confidence it gave him. And then 2011, the next year after that, he's beating Federer and Nadal all over the place in amazing fashion. Those are the things that define the big three, and that's what you look for when you look for the younger players. You look at the mental resolve that defines this sport. It's an endless sport, always going on. You go from clay to grass to hard court, and every point starts the same, but every point is a little bit different. It's small margins, it's physical, it's every day, it's all the time. It's so high level when you go from the world number 1 to the world number 1,000 to the college player to whoever else you can see. And it's endless, right? There's always something going on in tennis, and you don't know what to pinpoint or what to look at or what to grab onto. Well, if you grab onto anything, you grab onto what defines the sport, which is the mental resolve that pushes you a little bit harder in those type moments, makes you a little bit stronger, because guess what? The players also don't know. You go crazy on the tennis court. You lose your mind on the tennis court. You're losing your goddamn mind on the tennis court. Having conversations with yourself, saying, what do I need to do? And the racket isn't listening to you. Well, guess what? You have the racket. It's in your mind. And it's the little things you put in to get you over the line. Because we don't know. It's a secret, right? It's the big secret in tennis. We don't know what that little secret is that makes you win a tennis match rather than lose it. What to grab onto into the tennis season that can make players like the big three so dominant, because usually it's a little bit more chaotic, especially at the highest level when everybody is just so good. It's chaotic, and it's defined by such small, tiny margin moments, which is what makes the big three dominant stand out amongst great dominance of sports. That makes their dominance stand out more. How small margin this game is, and how a tennis match can be separated by a few points. Sinner, de Minaur at Rotterdam, that final, it was straight sets for Sinner, 7-5, 6-4. If you just looked at the scoreline, you would have been like, oh, simple win for Sinner. He won 3 more points than de Minaur did. And guess what? De Minaur played one of the best matches of his life, and he's a top 10 player now. Lost in straight sets to Jannik Sinner. This sport is defined by a few moments in time. That is what tennis is. And I think that when we look at their dominance and when you look at this sport, that's what makes their dominance stand out. It's defined by a few points here and there, and it's their mental resolve to get through those struggles and get through those matches and find ways out of tight moments again and again and again and again and again and again. And guess what? Again. Throughout all of the last years of tennis. Going through those tough moments and still finding their way out against all these, especially younger players time and time again. Because they had hundreds and hundreds of matches that they probably should have lost. But guess what? They were just too damn stubborn. You see that with Djokovic all the time saying match points, and that's what makes them them. Just putting that extra little hard work in and their passion for the game. Because guess what? They're fans too. They're fans too. The genuine passion and emotion Roger Federer showed on the court when he won a match, you know, sharing it all with the fans. And guess what? He cares about the sport too, just probably more than anyone. And that's what I think is a big key for all of these great athletes that we see of any sports. You know, whether that's LeBron in basketball or Tom Brady in American football or whoever it is. You know, I think that that is a big key to the success, and it's their self-belief and it's their passion to win. Not so much the fear and sadness in losing, but the joy in winning that really gets them to the line. And I think that that is a big thing. So maybe that's the secret, you know, to tennis. I don't know, but putting that a little bit more in, the little bit more work in all the time, whatever you can, gets you a better chance of winning that match in those small moments. And yeah, their mental resolve and just putting that hard work in got them there. So I think that that defines the big three more than anything else. And I mean, what a remarkable three players, not just Djokovic, but the two of them, the two others in Nadal and Federer. Three of the greatest that ever played. The fact we got them one era, we'll never see this again. You know, whether it's the stat that between 2011, from the start of 2011 to 2017 Madrid, you only had 4 Masters titles won by guys outside of the Big Four. 4 different Masters titles in that whole period. There are 9 held a year were won by players outside the Big Four. Or whether it's the stat that if only Wawrinka, Murray, Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic won either Australian Open, French Open, or Wimbledon every year from 2005 to when Alcaraz won Wimbledon. From 2005 Australian to when Alcaraz won Wimbledon. Only those 5 guys ever won a major. The young generations were pushed to the side, and their dominance we'll never see the likes of again. Doesn't mean the next era can't be great. So let's all, I hope that, you know, people don't walk away from the sport, because guess what? We're going to have a great rivalry. If you go back in time, you would have seen Sampras versus Agassi. You would have seen Borg and McEnroe. None of those eras were like the big three. They were great anyway, but we have to appreciate how rare this era was and how unbelievable these 3 guys are. And tennis will exist without them, but man, they made their mark. And, you know, I think it's interesting to talk about them, their differences, their similarities. And we'll see who the next great to step up to the plate is, but they changed tennis, and they'll definitely be influenced by Federer and his insane play, you know, so aggressive on the baseline, you know. They'll be influenced by Nadal and his mental fight always. They'll be influenced by Djokovic and his incredible athleticism. We see it now with the sliding on hard courts. We see so much influence, and that is why you play to change the game. All right, I appreciate you guys watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to Anthony's Tennis Hub if you are new. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share around the channel. I'll be here talking about more topics like this. And yeah, I appreciate everybody watching. I might try to make it shorter than this. I kind of like the long form stuff where you kind of can dive in deep. I think that's cool. But I'll probably do shorter stuff too. I'll do a bit of both, but I'm hopefully, you know, I've tried to be a kind of genuine outlet for tennis, and it's only the start where we keep it growing. And yeah, I appreciate everybody watching. Don't forget to subscribe also to Quality Shot Tennis, another channel that I do commentary for. I'll link a video above my head. I just did 33,000 views on a live stream there. So yeah, that's just a separate channel that I do. So please subscribe to that. And also please subscribe to Anthony's Tennis Hub if you haven't already. I appreciate everybody joining in. And yeah, I'll see you guys at the next one. Tennis keeps going. I'll see you guys for Monte Carlo stuff too.